Hi, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of the Endless Celts Podcast. I hope you're well who's listening. My name's Stephen, the host of Endless Celts, and I'm delighted to be joined by a show regular, Anthony. How are you?
I'm all good, Stephen. It's good to be back on for the pretty decent international break for Scotland, and Celtic are back in action at the weekend, so it's all good.
As you said, obviously, before we go on the Celtic kind of matters, we'll just touch upon Scotland quite briefly. Obviously, they played Moldova and most recently Austria, and they've won both games 1-0. Linda Diggs was a goal scorer in both games. And you were at the Moldova game in Hampden. What was it like being back?
It was fantastic. I was very pleasantly surprised, to be honest. I mean, I purchased the ticket a few weeks back, and you were having your pick of where you wanted to sit in the stadium. But when I got there on Saturday, there was over 40,000 there. It was practically a full house in the lower bowl. It was only the top tier of the south stand that was closed off, so it was a brilliant atmosphere. And obviously, we've came away with a good win on Saturday night. Although if we'd have perhaps taken our chances, we could have had a wee bit of a better goal difference. But then to follow that up with a fantastic result over in Austria, to give us we really needed 6 points from the 9 available. We weren't really expecting anything from Denmark. I think we can all accept that that's a country that's a class or two above us at present. But it's really about the fight for second place, and we've given ourselves a really good chance now. Massive game coming up next month against Israel at Hampden. So hopefully the Tartan Army can pack the place out again.
It seems to be Israel's always the next game, the next tough game, isn't it? I think it's the last 3 or 4 years Israel's been kind of dominating Scotland for Israel, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it. I think it must be the most common fixture in the international calendar now, Scotland, Israel. But yeah, obviously it's been very, sort of 50-50 in the results, but obviously we got the one that mattered in the Euro playoff last year, and obviously that put us through to the eventual playoff against Serbia. So yeah, we're hoping for another positive result at Hampden in a few weeks.
I mean, we covered Scotland in the European Championships, and it was just fantastic seeing the atmosphere around the place and people celebrating, people getting out the pubs with their friends and stuff. And obviously back then it wasn't quite full stadiums everywhere, but it was just the atmosphere and kind of the positivity it spread kind of around the country was fantastic. And see, in terms of obviously performers on the field, I've seen a lot of things on Twitter. Billy Gilmore's getting a lot of praise, Cal McGregor, rightly so. Who for you has kind of been the standout player over the last 3 games?
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, watching the only thing I would say about him, he missed a really good chance against Moldova, but apart from that, he really did run the show. I'd have to say Billy Gilmore would get my vote as well. He's a real class act. Every time he's on the ball, he just looks so comfortable, always trying to, sort of look for a forward pass or even just the most simple pass. You don't have football can be overcomplicated at times, or some players or coaches try and make it out to be. But yeah, he's a real class act. But you obviously have to give credit to our big man up front as well. He's not Cristiano Ronaldo by any stretch of the imagination, but he's scored 2 match winners in 2 very important games the last couple of weeks. So full credit to Lyndon Dykes as well.
One was a penalty, wasn't it, against Austria? So the pressure of hitting that penalty would have been immense. Obviously, knowing what's coming next, and we at Endless Celts obviously all hope for the best for Scotland and a big result, hopefully against Israel coming up. But we'll move on to current matters with Celtic. And I suppose the one big thing that's standing out from the international duty, and as much as it can throw at you in terms of club football, injuries, suspensions, that type of thing, COVID issues, we've seen an injury to Kyogos. Now, I don't know how serious it is, but from the footies I've seen, Anthony, he's went down on challenge and seems to be clutching at his knee. And I did notice in the last game he played for Celtic, he was having a bit of bother with his knee, and I think that resulted in him being took off in the game. But is that a concern for yourself that Kyogos might be missing? Obviously, we don't know the extent of the injury, but assuming if it's a knee injury, it could be a couple of weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my heart sank when I heard the news, Stephen. I've not seen the footage yet, so like you say, that doesn't seem to have. It seems to have been an off the ball incident. It's not been any sort of particular player to blame or anything like that. And yeah, you're absolutely right. The last few weeks, when we've been at the matches, I've seen that a few times. He sort of went down and he's been holding either his knee or the back of his calf. Most of the time, to be fair, when it's been domestically, it's been through really reckless challenges from opposing players. But this seems to have been something a little bit different. So touch wood, it doesn't seem to have sort of gathered any sort of more sort of sensational headlines in terms of, there's not been anything coming out of the club to suggest that it could be anything long term.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest issue is as well.
Yeah, obviously when your star player's injured, it's a concern.
Yeah. So Kyogos been our main performer this season, without a shadow of a doubt. He's been the best player at Celtic, and the way he plays, I mean, it's through the middle, and that's his position. And the scene that the former Japan coach came out and criticised the current Japan coach, funny enough, for playing him out in the left, and that's what Postecoglou's been trying to do, but it's an experiment for me that's failing. But just touching upon who could even come in to replace him. Obviously, we've got Giamakis that came in. He was a top goal scorer in the Eredivisie, the Dutch league, and we've got Albin Ayeti as well. Now, we're playing Ross County on Saturday. I don't know where Giamakis is in terms of match fitness. Obviously, Ayeti kind of in and out. At the start of pre-season, it looked like he would have been first choice going forward, but again, that changed quite quickly in the middle of pre-season. What about yourself? Is it a concern? Obviously, not to jump the gun, but Giamakis is the top goal scorer, and after that, maybe in the striker position, we are lacking a bit of depth, aren't we?
Yeah, obviously the departure of Edwards he's certainly our new striker, Giamakis. He's certainly got big shoes to fill. Having said that, when I was reading an article by Pierre van Hooijdonk in the papers last week, he was sort of getting asked his opinion on the guy, just as obviously it was the deal had just became official, and obviously Pierre, being a Dutchman and knowing a thing or two about scoring goals for Celtic, was asked his opinion on it. And he did say that Giamakis is more of a sort of Lee Griffiths type striker than an Edward. But that's not to say that he can't hold the ball up or anything like that, or that he's not physical. So yeah, but having said, I think he has been sort of training at Lennoxtown pretty much since the deal was made, as has the other two guys who came in on deadline day as well. So you would like to think that they'll be as fit and as ready as they possibly can be. That they've certainly had a lot more time to gel with their new teammates than the likes of Kyogo himself did when he first joined up after his period of self-isolation. So I think starting for Saturday at least, I think it may well be the case if Kyogo, if he's not going to be fit, that we could see a couple of debuts on Saturday, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of Giamakis, you're right to point out that Van Hooijdonk. I've seen what he said as well in terms of the kind of player like Giamakis could be in the Scottish League. Now, I'm going to take a bit of a side path with you here, Anthony, and it's something we haven't really prepared for, but I just want to know a few things. I was born in 94, and I don't really have much memories of Van Hooijdonk. Obviously, I've looked back and old footage and stuff of that team, because my granddad always says that the Tommy Burns team played the best football he's ever seen watching Celtic, and by all counts, they missed out on the league. Was it by a point, was it, or something like that? Or something?
Yeah, well, they went through the 95-96 campaign. They only lost one match the full season. It was just unfortunate we drew far too many games, and Rangers sort of pulled away sort of near the end of it. But yeah, we were right in the mix that season, right up till the very end, which was bitterly disappointing. But yeah, you're spot on with the correction. Yeah. We only lost one match. Yeah.
I mean, my granddad always says to me that Tommy Burns was ahead of his time in terms of manager, but in the way, the style he played and stuff. But what about Van Hooijdonk? What type of memories do you have of him in a Celtic shirt?
He was probably my first sort of goal-scoring Celtic hero, to be honest, Stephen. I was just sort of starting to go to the games at that point. The stadium reopened in 1995. It was the North Stand and the South Stand. Those were the only two stands available. The full sort of old terracing had been demolished, and that season, 95-96, the season that we just mentioned there, my dad and my elder brother Kevin, they went through to the games every Saturday. They had a season ticket in the temporary stand behind the goals, but because of it took a little bit longer than expected for the temporary stand to get their the sort of safety certificate. So as a compensation, because my dad and my brother had already paid for the tickets, they ended up a lot of the time being in the main stand, in absolutely brilliant seats. And the following season, when my brother was getting a bit older, he would start paying for his a separate ticket, and I would take the season ticket and go along with my dad. And so 96-97 was the year of the the three amigos, as it were. Cadet, Di Canio, Van Hooijdonk, Andy Tom. All of that side, and yeah, they were. As your granddad's absolutely spot on. They were an absolute joy to watch. It was just if it hadn't been for a certain Mr. Gorham in the Rangers goal, that side could have racked up a few trophies before they all went their separate ways. But yeah, my memory of Van Hooijdonk was he was fantastic in there. He was a big. He's 6'2", 6'3", and just he could hit a free kick. He could score goals with either foot. He was a battering ram, but he had great control as well. It was just a shame, obviously, around the time that him and his relationship with Fergus McCann just completely broke down, and the writing was on the wall when Fergus refused to bout his wage demands. But then again, of course, a certain Mr. Larsson from Sweden followed the year after, so it wasn't a bad replacement, to be fair to him. But yeah, it was. As I say, I was sort of 7-8 years old at that point. I was just starting to get to go to the games, and yeah, he was a special player. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, the thing that sticks out to me when I think about Van Hooijdonk is all the different hairstyle he's had. Every photo I've seen, it's all different. And you're right, the footage I've watched, and he scored a bullet headers, does both feet, as you said, free kicks as well. And to get a striker to do everything like that, especially nowadays, is worth its weight in gold. Hopefully, Giamakis can live up to some of his kind of expectations in terms of what he said in the article about him. But I mean, we're looking ahead to the Saturday's game here against Ross County, and we've beat teams 6-0. Do you know what I mean? Hearts and the Cup 3-2. Are you confident we can kind of turn over Ross County in terms of getting another big result? I said to you guys before in the previous podcast, the league form for me at the moment isn't really good enough. But again, you can see the progression, and I do agree with what everyone says in terms of Postecoglou at the moment. He's working miracles at Celtic Park from where we were left last season. And another thing I noticed as well, Anthony, did you see this thing going around Twitter that Neil Lennon's doing a Legends Night with, I can't remember who it is, but the other player involved in terms of Celtic, but he's doing a Legends Night, and I don't think that's going to go down too well with the majority of the Celtic support. I really don't. But looking ahead to the game, what's your feeling towards it?
Yeah, well, obviously we have to be, very sort of respectfully Ross County. They did beat us twice last year. That's the thing. A defeat to Ross County did cost Neil Lennon his job last season. The only problem was that it was the second defeat in February rather than the first defeat in November that ended up where he was finally relieved these duties. So we have to be, we've got to be very careful about getting too ahead of ourselves. I agree with you. But having said that, this is a completely different Celtic side now. I think the dressing room is more united, I think, than it's been in a long time. I think everyone, including the fans, sees what Ange is trying to achieve, the way he's trying to play the game, and I think the players are buying into that. I think obviously your Christopher Ayers, your Christies and your Edwards especially, they had sort of one eye on the door as much as they were happy to go along with it. With his message, you could say, especially those last couple of games, the bad habits of Edward and Christie were really starting to come back to the fore. So yeah, it is good that those guys have finally been moved on, and likewise for a range of other issues. I think Lee Griffiths is a distraction that the manager just simply doesn't need. So I think the dressing room and the squad as a whole is all sort of pulling in the same direction. So yeah, I think there's as much as it sounds cliche, I actually do agree with it these days. There's no such thing as easy games. But having said that, in the same breath, I think a home match against Ross County could be. There's not really many other teams in the league at present that you would want at home on the back of an international break and derby disappointment from a couple of weeks before. I think this is a real chance for, and it's I've just seen today that it's actually a sellout at Celtic Park on Saturday. So it's going to be a massive crowd, probably a few debuts in the team. So they've got a real chance to sort of make their mark on the team right from the word go. You know what Ange is going to be like. It's going to be the typical 100-mile-an-hour start, and hopefully that quickly, similar to what happened against St Mirren and Dundee before that. If we can get off on the right foot and really get at them, and if we manage to get a couple of goals early doors, then it could be comfortable. But we've slipped up a few times in the past against Ross County, not just last season, and that can sometimes be the case of just not being focused and treating the game properly. So it's important we do that, but I'm fully confident that Ange will have everyone, like the phrase I used before in a couple of podcasts before, was the sort of tunnel vision, just one game at a time. Anything that's happened has happened. We've had a few down points already this season, but we've had a few highs as well. And the next game's the most important one. So just get out there and get the 3 points in the bag, and we can move on to the start of the Europa League next week.
Yeah, the first game's against Real Betis, isn't it? Yeah, so that's something. That's something to look forward to. But in terms of like Ross County, I think you're right. We got beat twice by them last season. Obviously, one of the games led to them massive protests outside Celtic Park, and that for me is when Lenny should have left. But unfortunately, as you said, it was February, the one that kind of ended his reign as Celtic manager. But looking at it, I think at the moment, Anthony, they would be our bogey team. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. They've had a few positive results against us, not just at their home ground, but obviously Celtic Park last year as well. Like you say, Stephen, I totally agree with you. That was the day that Neil Lennon should have been sort of removed from his position as Celtic manager. You could see at that point that he had completely lost the dressing room. He'd lost the trust of the players. I'm not saying that he's completely and solely to blame for that. The players have got to take responsibility for their actions last season as well. But it was, Stevie Wonder could see that the season was gone as far as Neil Lennon was concerned last.
Yeah.
Still salvageable, but unfortunately we dithered and delayed. So yeah, I'm sure Neil may get asked a question or two about that. Like you say, at the upcoming fan event. It's Paul Lambert who's the other guest that night.
That's who it is. Yeah.
It may well be that the fact that Paul still subscribes to the survival lie across the river, that might take a little bit of the heat off Neil, right enough. So I'm sure all the fans that are going, I'm not going myself. I've been to a few of these first star events, but I'm not going to this one. I can't make it, but I'm sure those who are will, I dare say, might have a sort of difficult question or two for both guys, I must admit.
Oh, I think it'll be a tasty event, and you're right to touch upon the players. Kind of last season were gone, and obviously, I know we keep referring back to Neil Lennon, but he did call the players out after that European game against Ferencváros, and he basically saying players didn't want to be there. And if you look at it now, Ayer, Christie, and Edwards away, but there's one player that's kind of slipped under the radar who was, I think, one of them players. I think many Celtic fans believe, and that's Oliver Nisham. He was let go. His contract was terminated, and he's recently signed a 3-year contract with Swansea City. Now, just touching upon some of these players, Anthony, I mean, in some games, Oliver Nisham was the best. I mean, the best midfielder, I think, anyway, in the Scottish League at times. And then other games, he was woeful. What do you think it was with him that didn't really work out? Do you think it was just merely down to attitude?
Yeah, it was a strange one. Like you say, there was days where, and funnily enough, quite a few times against Rangers, he always he seemed to raise his game in the derbies. He scored a couple of match winners, I think, against them. Certainly, well, he scored one at Hampden, and he scored, I think it was Steven Gerrard's first derby as Rangers manager. Yeah. He scored the winner at Celtic Park. Yeah, so he's certainly one of those guys who's got all the talent in the world, but just doesn't seem to have that level of application. Now, when Neil Lennon came back that summer, so the summer that after we'd won the treble, there was a lot of chat about Nisham going. He didn't seem to be Neil Lennon's type of player. He was making sort of inappropriate remarks in the media about he wanted to be here, there and everywhere, anywhere but Celtic, it seemed at one point. However, and it was actually one of Neil Lennon's better days at the office when it comes to man management. The two of them sat down and had proper clear the air talks, and Cham in the first part of the season that sadly was curtailed due to lockdown, and Cham looked a different player. Obviously scored the winner over in Lazio, and he was really making a big impact, and we thought we've got the Cham of old back. But yeah, like you say, from the minute the players returned from lockdown last season, like a lot of the other players with bad habits had sort of creep back in his play and his sort of his all-round demeanour. And he was put out on loan. I think it was it Marseille, I think he went to, or Marseille or Lyon, I can't remember, one of the sort of larger French teams, and they were told he was basically binned from that deal as well, that the manager over there wasn't interested in him either, for the reasons that we've just sort of discussed. Poor attitude in training, sort of lazy, lack of dedication sort of thing. So it's sort of came to a head this summer. You could just even listening to one press conference for Ange Postecoglou would sort of allude to the fact that Oliver Ncham is not his type of player. Ncham is what I call a fair weather player. There's days when he can turn it on, but when he's not in the mood, he's as good as a man short. And I always remember that night at St Mirren when he got a red card after 15, 20 minutes. It was you could just tell it was a Friday night game. He didn't want to be there, and he almost did look like he got himself deliberately sent off just so he could go for an early bath. His performance that night was absolutely abysmal. It could well have been that there was no way back for him that night, but he did sort of make his way back into the team a little bit. But I just feel, for where Ncham's concerned, that he's, like you say, all the talent in the world, but unless you are prepared to be dedicated and focused 24 hours a day now as a professional football player, you won't make it to that next level. If Ncham had kicked on from his highs at Celtic, he could have been sort of looking at a proper team in the Premier League. As it stands, he signed a deal with Swansea, so with the greatest of respect, are not world beaters, but that's unfortunately the level that he's at the minute.
Well, if you do look at it as well, you make a great point there in terms of obviously dedication, fitness, and obviously the craft of football. Now, I mean, Brendan Rodgers described it as a 24-hour athlete. That's what it is. You have to be in that mindset 24/7. And if you look at Ncham, and I was saying Nisham, honestly, just lost my train of thought. But Ncham and Christie, they were both angling for moves to bigger clubs in the Premier League. And as you rightly said, Ncham had chances to go to Porto. Obviously, Celtic rejected them advances and the offers, and we let him go on a free, and now he's signed for a championship club on a 3-year contract. Likewise, Ryan Christie. Now, just to touch upon Ryan Christie here, just briefly, I spoke about it on the transfer roundup show with Edward Franny in terms of him going to Bournemouth. Now, he was really wanting to go to the Premier League, and he turned down Burnley. I think I can't grasp why, to be honest. They're a solid Premier League club. I don't know what he's thinking there, but if you look at Bournemouth and the quotes that Ryan Christie's come out and said, the Robbie King quotes, as Franny said, in terms of, I've always had an affinity with this club, I've always liked this club and followed it. Do you think this move, for me anyway, I think was purely down to money? What's your opinion on it? Because there's nothing Bournemouth has. There's actually nothing Bournemouth have that Celtic don't have, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely. That deal for Ryan Christie is based solely for financial gain. And I'm actually quite disappointed that neither he nor his father really have the kind of guts almost to just come away and say it. To be honest, Stephen, I mean, his dad, Charlie, was in front of the media today and said that he made the move as he sees it as a stepping stone. And he actually managed to say that without, bursting out laughing. He actually managed to say it with a straight face. Ryan Christie's took a step backwards in his career, but he's actually at the level that there's a reason why Burnley were the only Premier League team interested in him, and there's a reason why he has ended up at a Championship club, because that's where his recent performances suggest that he should be. Again, James, our friend of the show, penned an article about it last week, and he seemed to suggest that his departure actually came as a bit of a shock to Celtic's hierarchy and to Ange himself, because I think he did seem quite prepared to sign a new contract. And I think in terms of weekly wage, was going to be on the same as what he is now at Bournemouth. The only difference being that Bournemouth offered them a quite substantial signing on fee, which is what got the deal over the line. So there is I just wish sometimes players would be a bit more honest. Ryan Christie has left Celtic for financial gain, and I fail to see the sort of attraction to it. I know these guys at Celtic, they're not on sort of English Premier League wages, but having said that, if you knuckle down and you perform for Celtic, not only will Celtic end up being successful, but you will attract the sort of bigger clubs down south that can afford to pay you the sort of life-changing money. There's a reason why Kieran Tierney's been touted to be the captain of Arsenal at the minute, because as we see, Kieran Tierney's got all the talent in the world. I actually think Arsenal was the wrong choice, but you can see why the fans want him to be captain, because he's so talented. But like I say, I think he made the wrong move. Arsenal was the wrong club for him. But I fail to see, and I accept that I say that with sort of green tinted spectacles. But if I'm looking at both of the offers, I've got the chance to redeem myself to the Celtic crowd. I'm going to be playing in Europe, and the chance to sort of certify yourself as a someone that will go down in the history of the club, or I can make a couple of extra bob and go and play in the English First Division. It's bizarre, but that's the modern day player. I'm afraid some players are motivated by the opportunity to become legends. Other players are motivated by the opportunity to become rich beyond their wildest dreams. And sadly, players in the bracket of Ryan Christie and others don't seem to grasp the fact that you can have both, provided you're prepared to knuckle down at the club that gives you that opportunity.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. And one player that kind of epitomised that in the past was, do you remember Georgios Samaras? Obviously, you remember him, but he said he'd rather have trophies and a bank account full of money. Do you know what I mean? And that's the way you look at it, because that's the way you remember it, and everyone remembers Samaras. Do you know what I mean? Is he a Celtic legend? Is he whatever? But he's definitely a cult icon in my opinion. People loved him. Do you know what I mean? And Ryan Christie is, as you said, he's went for a financial gain, a sign-on fee. Do you know what I mean? Come on here. And you know me, I'm not his biggest fan, but at the end of the day, he was playing okay for Celtic up until he left. And I think Postecoglou fancied him as a player, and he could have got a tune out of him. But again, once they come sniffing Bournemouth, he's away again for money, and you just don't need that type of player around it. But to look at it as well, Anthony, two players got their moves to the Premier League. Christopher Ayer went to Brentford. I think it was for around 16 million, but I've seen reports saying it could be higher than that in terms of the initial fee. And then Odsonne Edouard has went to Crystal Palace. Obviously, not big clubs in the Premier League. Brentford obviously newly promoted under a good manager, Thomas Frank. I do like the way he plays and his style and stuff. But you look at, touching upon Odsonne Edouard first, I think he was purely purchased by Crystal Palace on his past reputation of a goal scorer. That kind of hung on a wee bit for him, because his form over the last 18 months for Celtic has been kind of, crap. Let's put a lesser word on it there, do you know what I mean? But what's your opinion on Edouard's move? Do you think Crystal Palace could be an actual stepping stone for him instead of a Bournemouth?
Yeah, I do. I mean, in terms of all the clubs all the players that have left, the clubs they've joined are all, in terms of footballing pedigree, are all a step down. But obviously, they will make massive financial gains from it just with the monies available down south, Stephen. I think, and this is where, you know me, like you say, perhaps similar to yourself with Christie, I've been Celtic hierarchy in my time on the podcast, but I also have to believe in giving credit where it's due. Now, when players like Ayer and Edouard, Christie, when it becomes very obvious that these guys want a move away, it then becomes the job of the sort of Celtic, the sort of board members to get the best deal possible for the club. That's what their responsibility becomes. And I have to say, the monies that they've made from these want-away guys in the last years of their contract is absolutely fantastic. I mean, Edouard, I think it's initially sort of 15, 16 million, I think it was something like that, but it can rise to add-ons. I know PSG are due some of that, but it's still a fantastic fee for a player, like you say, who's been out of form for such a long period of time, and in the final year of his contract. Christie had even less, I think. His contract was bizarrely up in January, and we've got a £1 million down payment for him, which can rise with further incentives. And like you say, IR, it's certainly in the teens of millions, and can rise as well. And I think, although don't quote me, I think there is some sort of sort of sell-on clause with his the deal that they negotiated as well. So what they've done there, Celtic, essentially, is that they've got guys that don't want to be there. They aren't 100% committed to Angie's sort of messaging, what he wants to do. They've had an eye on the door for a long time now, and we've managed to get big bucks in for them that we have, obviously Celtic ourselves, we've spent essentially the IR money already on the players that have come in. But Ange has also made it clear that he looks to spend in January as well. So obviously there will be money there available for him. So I think we've got to give the Celtic board credit where it's due, in the fact that we've got huge sums of money in for players with less than a year on their contracts who weren't fully committed. So as I say, I've got to, I take my hat off to them on that. Edward, like you say, because of current form, he wasn't going to get he wasn't going to end up at a Leicester or a Spurs or a team of that sort of level, and he's absolutely not the cream of the crop yet. He wasn't going to, he would have probably got laughed down the Stretford Road if if any of his agents tried to go near Old Trafford or the Anfield Road if he was going down Liverpool way. So Crystal Palace, I think that's a kind of fitting club for where he is at in his career. He's at a bit of a crossroads, and and Ayer as well. Again, he's a good player, but I don't think any of us that have seen him a lot would argue that he's the next Virgil van Dijk. I think he's an honest guy he's obviously got a lot of traits and plus points, but he's got a lot of weaknesses in his game as well. And again, wasn't really wanting to be still at the club. So I wish him well down at Brentford, and I actually think it's a decent move for him, because although this is their first year in the Premier League, you can see that there is some sort of, it's a settled club down there. There is a vision. Yeah. So he very much could kick on and have a great career down south. But yeah, wish them well. But it's the guys that have come in now. It's all about them to deliver and go and make their own name, write their own names in their history books.
I seen a photo on Twitter doing the rounds today of Christopher Ayer and Ivan Toney celebrating the goal for Brentford. What could have been last season if we actually got him over the line now? But
absolutely, yeah. That's it's sliding doors sort of moment, isn't it?
It's like what could have been. But again, we'll turn our attentions back to the Ross County game. And in terms of lineup and score predictions, what's your lineup prediction first, Anthony?
Yeah, so like I was saying earlier, just with the fact that it's a home game against a perceived lesser team in the division, I think there is an opportunity there where a few guys could make their first appearances for the club. So I've said, I'm not necessarily saying this is the team I would want, but I think this is a team that we're probably going to get. I think that obviously Joe Hart will start in goals. Now I think Tony Ralston, one of the reasons he wasn't called up for Scotland, there was a bit of an outcry when Nathan Patterson pulled out with injury that Tony Ralston wasn't then drafted in, but there has been some reports in the last couple of days that might be due to an injury. So I'm going to look into my crystal ball a bit and say that I think Juranovic might actually start at right back on Saturday, which might then see young Montgomery start at left back. So purely for the fact that that's quite a young starting lineup as well, I think what we'll probably see is Welsh and Starfelt keeping his place in the back four. I think that for this game, I think we will see Vickers at some point, but I think purely for the fact that Montgomery might start, I think we might see sort of Ange stick with established two, at least for the start. I think Jota will make his debut. I think there's obviously with Christie away now, there's a big gap to fill on the left hand side, and that's his natural position. So I think Ross County's as good a game as any to sort of throw. I think Abada will start on the right, just again with the fact that Forrest, I believe, still isn't fit at the moment. So you got to go with the man in for him, and I think we'll go Turnbull and McGregor and Rogic in the middle. Just I think Thomas. I think Rogic will be back in the team. Just again, it's one of those games that he really could. If he's in the mood and he gets on the ball early doors, he could cause County all sorts of problems. And I think just because we don't know the extent of Kyogos' injury yet, I think we will most probably see Giamakis make his debut as well. And perhaps if Kyogo is available, maybe sort of come on from the bench, or either that or it'll be a Yeti who'll replace him later in the match. So we await with bated breath to hear Angie's press conference tomorrow with all the injury updates. But yeah, I do think we'll see a couple of debuts on Saturday. Sorry.
I mean, I'll go with Joe Hart and goal, Juranovic right back, Welsh, Carter Vickers as the starting centre backs, and I'm going to throw in Liam Scales, Anthony, at left back. I just have a funny feeling that he'll start. I'll go McGregor in front of that with Turnbull and Rogic. That midfield still concerns me in terms of the depth in it, but again, it's what we have to go with. On the right-hand side, I'll go with Abada. Through the middle, Giamakis, if Kyogo's not available, but if he is, I'll start Kyogo up there. And then on the left, the Portuguese wonder kid, Yota. I can't wait. I can't wait to see this guy play, because every report I'm seeing, whether it's from Portuguese news outlets or Benfica themselves, they all say this kid. I say kid, he's 22, do you mean? But he's still young. But apparently he's meant to be unbelievable. The YouTube clips I've watched of him, again, YouTube, fair enough. But yeah, he looks fantastic, Anthony. Have you managed to see much of him, or are you in the dark as everybody else?
Yeah, I've seen a couple of the clips, and like you say, you always are a bit wary of the YouTube clips. I mean, some of the ones of Amido Baldi made him look like, Diego Maradona, but you have to, it's all about context. But yeah, I'm excited to see him. I mean, he's got a barnet that would make Stuart Armstrong proud for a start. I seen his press conference yesterday, and yeah, that haircut is absolutely magnificent. I wish I'd hair like that myself. But yeah, I just think this isn't one of those. It's not sort of Hearts at Tynecastle or Aberdeen at Pittodrie, where there's going to be that big sort of physical intimidation. Ross County are a pretty bruising bunch themselves, but I just think on the big pitch at Celtic Park, they're going to have so much room if they can get him on the ball and he can sort of make things happen. I think it could be the perfect opportunity for him to strut his stuff. So yeah, as I say, hopefully though, our man from Japan, Mr. Kyogo, will be able to make an appearance at some sort as well. We hope the reason why he was brought off on Sunday was purely precautionary. Fingers crossed, because the last thing we want is for him to be on the sidelines for too long, because we've seen even this early in the season just how vital he could be for our title bid. Yep,
100%. I think you're right. He's key to everything going forward. The way Celtic play and press from in front, Postecoglou wants that, and Kyogo's certainly that player. I mean, he's just fantastic. We could talk about him all night, Anthony, couldn't we? But looking ahead to the score predictions, what are you going with?
Yeah, I think it could be a good day, another good day at the office. So I'll be, and in fact, no. Do you know what? It's not. I can't be conservative about anything, and just even I hate the word in every possible way. So I'm going to go full blown. I'm going to go for another 6-0. Why not?
6-0. Do you know what? I'll match you. We'll go 6-0.
There's me at the start saying how we've got to be very respectful to Ross County, and the two years are coming up with 6-0 predictions. It's just a feel good factor at the club at the minute. We've got the buds.
Would it be too hard to ask you for goal scorers? Have you thought of that?
Yeah, I think we'll say Giamakis will will break his duck, and I think maybe Jota will as well. So one each for those two, and then I think a couple for Rogic and a couple for Abada as well. I'm redistributing the goals across the full attacking lineup.
I'll go a hat-trick for Giamakis. I'll go 1 for Jota, and then 2 for Turnbull. I think that
sounds good.
Sounds good. And obviously, this is the end of the kind of segment of the shows in terms of the topics and stuff that we covered. And I've brought back the quiz the last couple of times, but there's only the two of us, Anthony. Like, I'll be the quiz master, but I'll just win, so there's no point in doing it. But what I'm going to task you with, I mean, we were talking about obviously Tommy Burns there and stuff there, and things like that, and obviously the likes of Van Hooijdonk and DeCanio and Cadetti. Could you name me a five-a-side fantasy team from that team? Who would you have?
From that era? Oh, yeah. Well, unfortunately, in terms of goalkeeper, I mean, until sort of Gordon Strachan even came along, because you have to say that even Martin O'Neill, Rab Douglas was an honest pro, but he certainly wasn't Arthur Boric or Fraser Forster. And Celtic in the 90s, especially, goalkeeper was a real particular low point for us. So you're struggling to find a keeper, but purely on the 96, 97 goalie strip. That was my first goalkeeper strip when I was a wee boy, when Stuart Kerr was the keeper. I'll go for Stuart Kerr in goals. And then I'm just trying to think, we need to have I think he was a record signing for a while when we bought him from Bolton Wanderers. So I think we'll have big Stubbsy at the back. And then if it's five-a-side, I think you just got to have the three amigos strutting their stuff all about the place. I know there'll be a lot of people screaming at me, going, "How have you not got the maestro in there?" But even with a broken ankle, but Paul was just. It was actually the year before I started going to the games was when his career was winding down, sadly due to injury. So although I managed to see him, it was only a sort of testimonial. And then I think there was maybe one game he came on as a substitute, and that's all I ever managed to see of Paul McStay in the flesh. So that's my reason why I'm not putting him in the Tommy Burns dream five-a-side. But I think a keeper, a centre-half, and then the three amigos were just absolutely brilliant. So they would certainly, I'm not saying we would win the Tennent's sixes, because with big Stuart in goals we'd probably concede a few. But the three amigos up front, it would certainly be entertainment central.
Well, look, I mean, I just landed on you, so fair play for doing that. I mean, obviously we go off a topic list, but I just fired that. I mean, fair play. But look, what a way to end the show. Have you enjoyed this one, Anthony?
Absolutely. And I just wanted to say as well, Stephen, we're very lucky. Obviously, next week we'll be reviewing the Ross County game, but we're also going to be joined by my friend from work, who's a Spaniard who's made his home over here now. Mr. Vicente Perez has kindly agreed to join us on Monday because he is a Real Betis fanatic. So he's absolutely buzzing. We're looking forward to getting Vicente on, and we can sort of discuss the upcoming Europa League match in full. So yeah, a little bit of Spanish flavouring for us on Monday night. I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, here's hoping for a good result at the weekend, and then we can look forward to the European game on the back of a positive result.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm buzzing for that, to be honest. Talk about the Celtic and Real Betis connection. I think it'll be a fantastic show, and hopefully we're celebrating the win, as you said, on Ross County, and we look ahead to the European game. But to everyone who's listening, stay well and keep safe. Hail, hail.